Well, hello, I'm Georgie Barrett, tech journalist and broadcaster, and welcome to Oneweb's 7th satellite launch. Now, we are actually 24 hours late, as the launch was meant to take place yesterday, and in a minute we'll find out exactly why it was postponed. But the very 24 hours late, as the launch was meant to take place yesterday, and in a minute we'll find out exactly why it was postponed. But the very good news is that we're now ready for action. Yes, today we're bringing you live the next stage of the mission, which will enable a better connected world. In the next half an hour, we'll see the latest batch of 36 Oneweb broadband satellites launched into low Earth orbit from the state-of-the-art Vosnochny Cosmodrome in Russia. Each launch expands Oneweb's capability to bring low latency, high-speed internet to those parts of the world where it's needed the most. Yes, this landmark day will bring the number of active Oneweb satellites to over 200. So sit back and enjoy the next 30 minutes, as we're not only going to see the launch happen live right here, but we'll also get to learn about what these satellites are doing and just how they are made. And if you want to get involved, you certainly can. Do come say hi to us on Twitter. You can send us your questions via @OneWeb, or you can use the hashtag OneWebLaunch. Now, launch preparations are well underway, so let's find out what happened yesterday as we cross live to the flight desk in France to join Arianespace's CEO, Stefan Israel. Cool very good evening to you, Stefan.
I love the when it
good evening.
Booster step.
Now, Stefan, talk me through what happened yesterday.
Yes, so you know that in the last hours before the launch, after having starting the filling of the rocket, the 3 stage, we are for sure checking that all parameters are working nominally. And this is to be done to make sure that we go for a safe and reliable launch. And we have had an alert on an electrical equipment. Our partners have decided to change this electrical equipment. It is a very easy operation under standard procedure. This electrical equipment has been changed, and now the launcher is fully ready for liftoff tonight. So good news.
Great. So it was quite an easy turnaround. It wasn't too difficult to sort.
No, it was more than easy to do it. It is really under standard procedure. I must say it's not the first time it happens, so we know perfectly well the story, and it is absolutely with no problem.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that. Thank you very much, Stefan. Now, this is going to be your 7th launch. You and your team will operate for Oneweb out of the 19 that are planned. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what's going to actually happen tonight?
Yes, so we are now in the final operations before the launch. So the liftoff shall occur at 5:38 Universal Time. And then the mission duration will be 3 hours and 51 minutes. So we will have a certain number of separations of the 36 satellites. And after this 3 hours and 51 minutes, we will have separated all the 36 satellites, and it will lead to 216 satellites for Oneweb into orbit. And you know that we separate the satellite at 450 kilometers, and then the satellite, by their own propulsion means, are going to their final destination, which is a little more than 1,000 kilometers, to be exact, 1,200 kilometers from the Earth.
You know what, you make it sound almost quite simple, but I'm sure this is an incredibly complex mission that has been many months in the making, hasn't it?
Yes, for sure. It's a very complex mission. We have to prepare the satellites with our friends from Oneweb Satellites. We have a team in Florida. We have also, for sure, our team in Vosnochny, and we are working very closely with the customer, for sure, with Oneweb, but also with all our Russian partners, Roscosmos, RKC Progress, NPO Lavochkin, Tsenki, Glavcosmos. We are all partners to deliver a safe and reliable launch tonight. This is our goal, and let's wait now for what will happen in a few minutes.
Yeah, I got to ask, how are you feeling, Stefan? Do you get nervous at this point? Are you excited?
we are focused, we are very concentrated, we have to deliver. A launch is a launch, so we are focused on the tonight mission, and we will monitor the next step, and we will come back to you after.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, I'll let you get back to focusing and on with the job at hand. Thank you so much for taking the time to speaking to us tonight, Stefan. Now, let's speak to OneWeb's launch expert, Vice President for Space Infrastructure Development, Maurizio Vinotti. Welcome, Maurizio. Good to have you back again. Now, it'd just be great to get your thoughts on last night's postponement.
We are grateful for the support from Arianespace team in both Vostochny and Paris. What is important is that the suspected anomaly was caught in time, and we look forward to today's launch.
Absolutely. It is really great that they managed to solve it in time for tonight's launch. Now, before we actually get to that, let's look in more detail at the satellites themselves, because there are already 182 right now circling above us, and today's launch will bring that total to a very impressive 218. By the end of this year, the OneWeb infrastructure will be large enough to deliver continuous connectivity at latitudes above 50 degrees north, which will include the UK, Northern Europe, Canada and Alaska. Now, once the OneWeb constellation is complete, 648 satellites will connect you to fast, low latency internet wherever you may live or travel. So, whether you're mid-ocean, mid-air, or just, in the middle of nowhere when I'm off visiting my grandma on the sticks, those satellites will be able to bring connectivity for the very first time to the most hard to reach places. So let me just give you a little bit more background on the satellites themselves. They're around the size and weight of a fridge, and they are powered by lithium-ion batteries, just like electric cars. But unlike those, these guys get all their charge from solar power. The design itself consists of 4 modules, which fit together in the shape of a box to form the main structure. That modular design means that they can be manufactured quickly and cost-effectively. Now, the satellites are manufactured by OneWeb Satellites in Florida's historic Space Coast. OneWeb Satellites is a joint venture between OneWeb and Airbus, and they're able to produce 2 satellites a day for around 1/50th of the time and cost of traditional construction. Really, really impressive stuff. They're then shipped to Russia to be loaded into the dispenser, which is located at the top of Arianespace Soyuz launch vehicle. Now, compared to geostationary satellites, OneWeb satellites will orbit 30 times closer to the Earth, giving us that low latency, high speed, stable connection. The individual satellites act like nodes in a network, transferring your data wherever you are in the world. Now, earlier, I spent a little bit of time chatting with OneWeb Satellite CEO James Hines and mechanical engineer Kelsey Spagnolia to see just how these marvels come to life. Hello James, nice to meet you. Firstly, can you just give us a little bit of background on OneWeb Satellites? What makes you guys different from other satellite manufacturers?
Well, Georgie, how long have you got for that answer? But I'll try and be quick. So, Georgie, thanks a lot for the privilege of talking today. Airbus OneWeb Satellites is basically a joint venture between Airbus and OneWeb. And its sole mission is to basically design and to produce satellites for low Earth orbit. And just to kind of give a couple of points of reference. So exactly what Ford did in mass production of cars and Airbus do in the mass production of aircraft is what we want to do, and we are doing with satellites. And so, again, looking at those examples I told you, you're looking at many units coming off a production line in any given day.
Why is it so important that you're creating them at such a rate?
Well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, today is the 7th launch for OneWeb, and it's a real milestone in terms of being able to say we have built 200 operational spacecraft and getting them delivered. So if you look at the overall size of the constellation for OneWeb, it's absolutely key that we have a factory which can deliver satellites at the rate they need to launch for the business case for their constellation.
So can you just talk me a little bit more about this production process? Because this is really what makes you guys unique. How does this operation all come together?
So the factory for producing the spacecraft is in Florida, but it'd be remiss of me to mention the other people who make that really a partnership. So first of all, we have a site in Toulouse, France, where we have a good few, if not the majority, of our engineering team and also support services. But we also rely on a global network of suppliers who bring in those raw elements to make the spacecraft happen in Florida. And then the final piece of the puzzle in terms of the partnership is our customers. And it's absolutely important that they are involved at every single step of the process. So when they get those spacecraft ready for launch, like we have today, they know exactly what work, what quality, what performance has gone in to make that happen. So it's really about a global partnership, looking at our suppliers, looking at our various factories and OneWeb satellites, and of course the customer who is along with us at all points of that journey.
Well, speaking of that global teamwork, let's now speak to Kelsey, who's actually over in Florida. She's one of the engineers that builds these satellites. Kelsey, it's so nice to meet you. Tell me where you are, because I feel like that's the production line right behind you. Am I right?
Hi, Georgie. Yes, you're correct. There is a part of the production line behind me that you can see. And this is where we build one of the 4 modules that make up the satellite.
Could you talk me through that process then? How do you actually go about building a satellite?
We have 4 main modules that come together to build the satellite. The first 3 are what we call the service modules. We have the avionics module, which is the brain of the satellite. It has the computer on board that processes all of the functions for the satellite. Next, we have the propulsion module, which helps propel the satellite into its right position in orbit. And then we have our solar arrays that are the power system that use the solar energy to charge the battery, which charges the satellite. And then our last section is the payload, which is the overall purpose of the spacecraft's mission. And that for us and for our customer is to have RF communication for broadband connectivity.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kelsey. I'll let you get back to work.
Thank you.
James, let me come back to you, because you mentioned earlier that global partnerships are really required to make the production process successful, but on a more local scale, by actually building OneWeb satellites in Merritt Island, you guys are really having an impact on the local economy, aren't you?
We definitely are. And what I would start in terms of the answer is the importance of a two-way relationship. And it's critical in any relationship. But in Florida, we are having the great privilege of being on the Space Coast. So we have access to a great number of people, great number of skills, and also various organizations who are very, very tuned to providing that level of quality. So that's one thing which we have. But at the same time, what we're trying to do is to work with local development corporations. So we've got corporations like the Space Florida, who've helped us build that particular vision and mission, and other development corporations within Florida. But then at the same time, what we are also trying to do is we're trying to feed back into that workforce, into that ecosystem elements. So, for example, we have an apprenticeship program, which roughly runs for about 2 years, where we're developing those high-tech skills so that we're not just taking from the database and the portfolio of people around us, but we're actually trying to feed back into that workforce going forward.
Brilliant. So you're both sort of tapping into the expertise that's already there in the area and also helping bring up the next generation of talent. Can I just quickly ask, how are you feeling? How does launch day feel for you?
Launch day is a huge relief because you have got everything done when the customer needs it to be done. But it's also a day of great excitement to be shared with a lot of people. And there's also a little bit of nerves, not in what you've built, what you've done, but the fact that everything's coming together to go on a rocket, which is an extremely established, well-designed, proven product, but still bringing it all together on launch day. It's just a little bit of nerves, but it's a whole mixture of feelings. It's a good day. And I do wish OneWeb the very best.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much for joining me.
Okay, thank you.
Well, speaking of those nerves, liftoff is less than 8 minutes away. Very shortly, we'll see OneWeb continuing their mission to connecting the unconnected. Now, technology has been crucial in keeping us all in contact this past year. And while it may seem like everyone has a smartphone these days, almost half the world, which is more than 4 billion people, are not yet online. And for many that are, the service can be slow and intermittent. Well, Oneweb hopes to change that by giving everyone the connection that many of us take for granted. And as we're so close to liftoff, let's now check in with Maurizio to see how preparations are going for the Oneweb team. Maurizio.
Thanks, Georgie. Over the last few hours, the Satellite Operations Center, the SOC as we call it, has performed a series of checks. At T-4 hours, we did a final check with the telemetry and telecommand ground stations that will acquire the satellites after the separation from the upper stage. At T-45 minutes, the SOC team has given the final go for launch. The battery status has been monitored, and right now our 36 satellites are warm and cozy inside the fairing at the top of the Soyuz rocket.
Okay, well, speaking of those warm and cozy satellites, can you talk me a little bit about how they actually function?
Well, absolutely. So the satellites are a shape of a large fridge, as you mentioned earlier on, and the two key elements, most notably, are the antennas that enable the connection from the internet to the user terminals and vice versa. We have two dishes, two parabolas that are in charge for the connectivity with the ground network, in particular the gateway stations in Ka band. And what looks like a fanned out deck of cards in the face of the satellite that looks toward the Earth is the Ku, the user terminal antenna that transmits in Ku band. You can also see the solar panels. These are the wings of our birds that deploy after the satellite separates from the rocket.
Great stuff. Well, let's bring into the conversation from Arianespace, their Chief Brand and Communication Officer, Gregory Gavroy. Welcome, Gregory.
Hi, Georgie. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be with you tonight and to help you knowing more about this new Oneweb mission.
It's brilliant having you here, Gregory. Earlier this week, we actually saw the rocket being rolled into position. Can you talk us through exactly what happened? Because it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, okay, Georgie, here we go. So the combined operations have consisted in first, the integration of the complete stack of 36 Oneweb satellites on the upper stage of the Soyuz launcher. It's called the frigate. And second, the encapsulation phase with the fairing installation. This operation has been processed horizontally, as you can see, in dedicated facility and clean room. And then what you can see in the video is the transfer of the upper composite to the launcher integration building. So where it has been integrated and finally prepared on top of the Soyuz core. It's called the 3 stage. So to summary, first integration on top of the Soyuz 3rd stage, and then complete integration of the launcher, easy. So 3 days before the launch, the complete launch vehicle has been transferred to the launch pad, an operation performed by the train, as you can see on your video. And once arrived on the launch pad, the launch vehicle has been vertically tilted and the mobile gantry has been safely installed around the launcher. And after completion of this installation, so the launch pad operation have then been initiated with line connections set up, and we proceeded with the different verifications. So the countdown and dress rehearsal have finally been run successfully around at D-2, so 2 days before the launch, so to say. And while I was speaking, I'm also connected with the monitoring system of the mission, and I can confirm that final ops are running as expected, and we have a Soyuz rocket ready for launch tonight.
Well, that I'm very pleased to hear. And actually, looking at the countdown clock, we're just 3 minutes off liftoff. Gregory, just talk me through what is actually happening at the launch pad right now, because we've got some visuals on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, final operations are still running as expected, as you can see behind me. So all good here. The beginning of the launch vehicle final automatic sequence has been initiated manually around H0. H0 is the liftoff time, minus 5 minutes, with a turn-off key in start position. So let me share a secret with you. In Russian, the command order is called "Kluch na start," meaning key on start. And purging operations are ongoing, likewise. And a few seconds ago, the umbilical connectors were separated, meaning on Frigate, the upper stage, the switch has now been down to the onboard power supply system, making the upper stage powered autonomously. Before this disconnection, 2 minutes and 25 seconds before liftoff, the communications between the ground and the launcher upper part were provided by the umbilical connectors indeed. And in the meantime, the pressurization of the Soyuz 3-stage tanks is being run. And at H0 minus 45 seconds, the switch will be done to the 3-stage onboard power.
Brilliant stuff, and I've just seen some lights going on there, all very exciting. Maurizio, how are you feeling right now? This is a pretty complicated mission, isn't it?
It is. We've got a long journey ahead. We have a lot of satellites to drop off at different locations. It's a complex mission for Soyuz that will be completed in just under 4 hours.
Now, Gregory, as we haven't got long until takeoff, can you talk me through exactly what happens in those final few seconds before the big moment?
Ignition, booster step.
Yes, Georgie, indeed, we are getting information from a team of colleagues in Russia. We call it in French the CVI, actually the Immediate Insight Control Team. And this operational team is tracking the launch vehicle and receives telemetry data directly from it, and is thus able to confirm when a major milestone of the launch sequence has been passed.
Brilliant stuff. So that is what is going to be happening in those final 30 seconds. They're going to be doing those final checks right now. Now, this is actually a very early morning launch over in Russia. It's about 2 a.m. over there. They've been working throughout the night. And as we wait for liftoff, Maurizio, just talk me through what we're seeing on the live feed here.
So it's just about 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds right now. The launch was delayed by a day, and as explained by our colleagues from Arianespace, this was due to apparently an anomaly on one of the units.
Oh, I can see some smoke coming out there, and actually I can feel like the infrastructure, it's dark out there, but I feel like the infrastructure is moving away there. It's amazing, isn't it? It's really atmospherical, actually, seeing the sort of smoke around it in the night time. That is incredible.
We're almost there. So this is launch number 1939 for Soyuz rocket.
And look at that, the smoke is starting to billow out, and that is it. The engines have ignited. The thrusters are going to be going through those different stages that Gregory was speaking about. Look at that blaze, it's just phenomenal. You can actually see the vibrations. And there we have it, liftoff of Oneweb's Launch 7. Look at it shooting up there, moving at phenomenal speeds. How are you feeling, Maurizio?
This is phenomenal, as you said, Georgia. I'm sure I share the feelings of all my colleagues when I say that I'm so excited right now. And along this, there's underlying tension keeping us all on our toes and keeping us really focused. Right now, you're seeing the boosters doing all the hard work, pushing us against the Earth gravity. They're going to burn in just less than 2 minutes, 1 minute and 58 seconds.
Absolutely, and it's quickly shot under cloud cover there. We can see some onboard cameras of it still moving. How fast is it actually going right now?
So the rocket is constantly increasing its speed through different stages of the ascent. The final orbital velocity will be around 7.6 kilometers per second, not per hour, but per second. Right now, the satellites are experiencing an acceleration of about 5 Gs, which is similar to riding an extreme white-knuckle roller coaster.
That's a seriously extreme roller coaster.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We're launching also, important to say, in plane 3 tonight of our constellation. There's a long way to go, but also important to say that by the end of the day, we're going to have deployed more than 1/3 of our constellation. So 4 hours journey before all the 36 satellites are released from that.
So this is the start of that 4-hour journey ahead of the satellite. Gregory, can you explain how you're getting that information that we're seeing on screen at the moment from the rocket?
Yeah, absolutely. I explained to you what is the role of our colleagues in charge of the telemetry. I can confirm that the telemetry is okay and everything is nominal for the moment. I can come back on a short moment you've experienced just a few seconds before the launch, what we call the ignition sequence. So we had a progressive increasing of the thrust level, actually. You experienced it. The goal of this progressive sequence is to make sure that the engines work normally. So we go from 20 20% of full power, 11 seconds before liftoff, to full thrust level at liftoff time H0. That was impressive.
It was really impressive, and it's so exciting to watch, and delightful that it's been a successful liftoff. But of course, this is just the start of the journey, as Maurizio was saying. Maurizio, can you talk us through what those next stages are?
So we've just seen the booster separation. So we are obviously seeing it live, and we don't need the boosters anymore. This is all part of the plan. We are shedding unnecessary weight.
Brilliant stuff. And Gregory, when do we reach maximum acceleration? And is that a very particular point? Is it important?
Yeah, absolutely, Georgie. This is critical. This is actually the job of the first stage of our Soyuz rocket, is to get the launch vehicle away from the Earth. So it is needed to provide maximum acceleration level from the very moment of the liftoff, actually. So the first stage, which consists in 4 boosters arranged around the central core, is called the bundle, and it weighs 45 metric tons each. And this bundle is powered by engines. They are called with the lovely and sweet name of RD107A, which produce a total thrust of 340 metric tons at liftoff. Impressive, isn't it?
Absolutely, Gregory, and thank you. And right now there are 36 Oneweb satellites that are sitting on the top of the Soyuz launcher. The fairing is protecting them in the initial phase of the ascent. The fairing has several jobs. It's a shield. Most notably, what the fairing does is protecting the satellites from severe conditions of the launch and the atmosphere. There is acoustic vibrations at liftoff and also friction when the launcher is flying through the dense part of the atmosphere at very high speed. At the present altitude, there's no more atmosphere, so no need to maintain the fairing on the launcher to protect the satellite. So the launcher will be soon liberated from these dead weights as well. And if you could see the satellites right now, you would notice that they are attached to a central dispenser in a configuration that resembles a corn kernel. Each of them having a truncated pyramid configuration that maximizes the number of satellites inside the fairing itself. But we are now at the end of the second stage phase.
Brilliant. So, Gregory, can you talk us through what the next stage is then?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, Maurizio just mentioned the fairing. I can confirm it has been jettisoned and separated.
Great
as well
news.
as the first stage. So great news, the launch
Success
is going well.
so far. Yes, it is. It's going very well.
And still in order to save weight, as Maurizio mentioned, the second stage and the fairing has been separated. And it is now the turn of the third stage to burn for approximately 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So the third stage is powered by one other engine called with one other sweet and lovely name. This one is RD124. And it produces a thrust of 30 metric tons.
Brilliant. So, these stages are clearly really important to the launch. Would you mind, Gregory, just giving us a sort of a summary of the stages that we've seen so far and what we can expect for the remainder of the mission?
Absolutely, Georgie. Happy to. So tonight's mission started with the 4 boosters phase for a duration of about 2 minutes. Then you remember the core stage took the reins during less than 3 minutes, just a few moments after the fairing has been jettisoned and separated. Now, ahead of us, you can see it on the animation, the next step is the separation of the third stage from the nose module, which will occur 9 minutes and 22 seconds after liftoff. What is the nose module? So it includes the upper stage, called frigate, again, the dispenser, which is the structure that gathers the satellites on the launcher, and the 36 Oneweb satellites themselves. The frigate upper stage will start doing its job with the first ignition of its main engine in order to reach the intermediate transfer orbit. This phase will then be followed by a long ballistic phase. And the second ignition will be performed for circularization and injection of the satellites into their separation orbit.
Feel free to keep watching.
So the satellites release sequence will start with, first, the separation of the 4 satellites integrated on the top conical part of the dispenser, and then 8 successive separation of the 32 satellites integrated on the cylindrical part of the dispenser, from the top row to the bottom row, 4 satellites at once. And as illustrated on this 3D animation, it means that 9 separation events are necessary for the complete release of the 36 satellites. And between each separation event, the sequence is identical. 19 minutes, which consists in a series of maneuvers like follow. Firstly, a tilting maneuver of the nose model. Then a boost of the frigate to gain in speed during a few seconds, with the aim to ensure enough distance between the satellites and thus to avoid the risk of a collision. Then a new tilting of the nose model to the required orientation for the satellite separations. And finally, the separation is commanded by the frigate upper stage itself, triggering a smooth separation ensured by the relaxation and specific springs. And the end of this complex release sequence occurs a little bit less than 4 hours after the liftoff with the ninth and last sequence of satellite separation. Easy, isn't it, Georgie?
I'm glad I'm not in charge of all that, but thank you. That was really helpful to just sort of get that overview of exactly what awaits the OneWeb satellites. Now, Maurizio, we've discussed stage 1 and stage 2. Can you talk us through phase 3?
Yes, sure. The launch phases are always extremely exciting, and we're looking forward to confirming stage 3 separation. While waiting for that, let's take a moment to highlight that we're also in the process of deploying our ground network infrastructure, the key elements of which are the satellite access portals. These are antenna farms, as we call them, distributed across the globe. That is a key piece of what will enable the commercial service introduction and continuous connectivity at latitudes above the 50 degrees north by the end of 2021. But now we're coming closer to frigate ignition.
So Gregory, let's go back to you. Can you update us on any progress? Have you heard anything more?
Yes, Georgie. So the third stage is on the way to be separated, and the frigate upper stage is getting ready to switch on its main engine. Just looking at my colleagues to see if the third stage has been separated yet. Not yet. It's coming. I will keep you informed. And so after that, the first step is called the pre-burn phase, and it lasts 55 seconds. So its aim is to give a quick burst of acceleration, and hence to push, and I just had the confirmation that the third stage has been separated. So
great. Actually, you can see that on screen as you were speaking. That's really incredible.
Absolutely.
So that's now confirmed.
Yeah, I'm pursuing with the explanation of what's ahead. So the aim of this burn phase is to push the fluids back in the tanks. So just imagine when you suddenly and strongly accelerate your car, you get pinned back against the seat, and that's exactly what will happen here with the fuel in the tanks. So this is the description of the first step of the frigate mission. And this first ignition enables to inject the nose model into an intermediary transfer orbit, which is actually an elliptical orbit. And the duration of this boost is just over 5 minutes. So fingers crossed now, we will be able to confirm the success of this ignition in a few seconds, so stay tuned, folks.
Brilliant, I'm glad it's all going so well. Maurizio, can you talk us through what's going to happen next?
Well, the next phase of the journey is about to start. The frigate is really the smartest part of the rocket with its own brain, and will execute a series of separations as described by Gregory. This is like a school bus drop-off, as it will release 4 satellites per stop in a series of 9 separations in total. And know that as our celestial bus has only 1 gear, and after each drop-off it becomes lighter, the frigate will have to fire its engine for a shorter period of time after each separation. Once the satellites are released, the onboard computer wakes them up, and the team at the Satellite Operations Center takes control of the satellites.
Brilliant. Well, that is where we're actually going to leave the mission for the time being. So far, so good. Thank you so much, Gregory, Maurizio, and of course, the entire team at OneWeb Satellites and Ariaspace for allowing us to join them live and for all their insights. Really exciting stuff. Well, that's nearly all we have time for. But before we go, Maurizio, as you can expect, we've had quite a few questions coming in from Twitter. People have been submitting them to you. So I thought we'd just quickly finish with you answering some of them. So our first question has come from Jeffrey, and he's asked, how does OneWeb's connectivity work over oceans?
The objective of OneWeb is to deliver fast broadband at a global scale with low latency. And we can do this thanks to our ground network infrastructure that we briefly were mentioning and referring to earlier on. Is essentially a network of antennas that are grouped in antenna farms that ensure that each and every satellite at any point in time throughout the orbit is connected to the ground. And that ensures continued connectivity from a user perspective.
Great stuff. And Antonella wants to know, how does someone buy Oneweb's service? Can you explain how to actually go about ordering it?
It's simple. Just ask your preferred local telecom operator.